Okay. All right, so now so I've been around a really long time, so I ought to know how to do some of these things, but every office is different. And in here, I happen to be in Marietta today. And here in the Marietta office, we have a brand new young lady who is taking care of all of the clerical and the IT stuff and everything. Her name is Hannah. And she is just in the process of figuring out how to get us all set up when we're in here. So anyway, I appreciate her. And if we have a button or two missed, then we'll just pretend it's my fault because it probably is. And we'll go from there. So anyway, if you can hear me now, that's wonderful. I see a couple of comments on there. Good morning and good morning. So I think we're there. So yesterday we went over the residential listing agreement in quite a bit of detail. We went through it pretty much item by item, paragraph by paragraph to discuss all of the things that you needed to know about filling out the residential purchase agreement. And now that you know, if you think back to where we've started this whole process, you put together your database and you make your calls and you do open houses and you get business lined up or potential business lined up. And you get somebody who wants you to come and list their house. And we went through CMAs and property valuation and things to try to figure out the price on houses. And then we got to a point yesterday where we actually needed to know the contract because we're getting ready to fill out the contract and go out and meet with people. So prior to that, not really prior to it, but along with it, now that I know the contract and now that I know the house that I'm going to go to, there's a little important step that comes in there that everybody should do all the time. It should be one of those 100% items in your mind. You have some things that you say, well, yeah, I do it most of the time. I do it sometimes. I do it whatever. This should be 100% of the time. And what it is it's pre-qualifying the seller. Now, I know that everybody thinks, oh, well, when I pre-qualify the buyer, I set them up with a lender. And the lender pre-qual, well, that's right. We don't have somebody who pre-qualifies a seller separate from ourselves. It's up to us to take the time to pre-qualify the seller. And when I say pre-qualify the seller, it's obviously it's a few different things, although there is some overlap. But I need to find out, and we're going to watch a video on this that's going to go through some questions and things that you can ask. But what we're trying to find out is their motivation. All right. So why do you want to sell? Is it something you have to do? Is it something you just want to do? Are you downsizing because you don't like steps anymore? Are you upsizing because somebody in the household is pregnant and we're going to enlarge our family? Mom and dad are moving in with us. Who knows what is going on? Everybody has a different reason. I lost a job, so now I have to go find something that's less expensive and things. So everybody has a reason. We need to find out what that motivation is. The reason we need to know that, a couple of reasons, is that one is that obviously we need to attach a timetable to that, a time frame. So you're motivated, you have to move, you've got a new job, you want to get closer to your job, you've got family moving in with you. We need to find something that's big enough for that. Blah, blah. Whatever it is, establishes a time frame for you. Somebody that says, well, if we could get $1 million for our property, then we'd sell. But otherwise, we're okay here. Well, that's not motivation. That may be something that you still want to do. You may do a CMA and find out that it's worth $1 million and you think you could get it sold. So maybe that's a reason for you to take a listing, but it's not a motivation for a seller yet. They don't have a time frame. They don't have anything in mind. Here we are, June. We'd like to have a house in time for my kids to start school because we don't want to have to move school districts in the middle of the year. Well, that's motivation. Okay, this is July. School's going to start late August, early September, whenever school starts. Sometimes we have year-round school, so they're starting at all different times. But bottom line is that that's motivation. That's something that maybe we should have jumped on earlier. Maybe they should have jumped on earlier, but it's motivation. If you really want to get this done by then it's going to affect how we market it and what we price it at and things. So we need to pre-qualify the seller and see what their motivation is. So have those conversations. I know it sounds like it's none of our business, but it is our business. It's exactly our business to find out how badly you need to sell your house. And pre-qualifying will kind of set you apart from the competition, right? A lot of people don't do that. You'll see that out of all of the people that you talk with and things, if they've talked with other realtors and things, you're the only one that's going to be doing that. We don't have a lot of people that pre-qualify, but it's an important part of things. This actually, just so you're not confused, this actually goes with the video that we're going to do in just a minute. Okay. All right. So anyway, and if you're competing for a listing, it's nice to know. So that's going to be one of the questions that we ask. One of the questions is, are you interviewing any other agents for the job of selling your house? Well, yeah, we talked with somebody yesterday and we're going to talk to somebody else the day after tomorrow or whatever. It's nice to know, isn't it? Is it going to change what you do? Maybe not. Maybe you're going to do it really good all the time, but maybe it'll change a little bit about what you do. It might change a couple of the questions that you ask. Oh, well, did they provide you with whatever? Did they provide you with your market plan? Did they talk to you about what company are they with and things? Okay, great. I'm glad you had a chance to talk to other people. But it kind of, now you know, because you talk to them on the phone, you know that you're competing against somebody when you go out there. It's like when you run track. Do you know that you're competing with people? Yeah, because you go out there and you line up on the start blocks and you run track. And I know that I'm competing with a whole bunch of other people. If I just went out there on my own and I was the only person on the track, is that competition? No, not really. It's kind of like they've already decided on me and I'm happy for that and I'll just write it down. But I go out there with a different attitude. I go out with a different mindset. I know that even though I was going to be really professional anyway, and I was going to do a really good market analysis, and I was going to do a really good build up as to what kind of person I am and the company I work for and all those things. Does it entice you to do it a little better? Does it entice you to throw an extra item or two in there that you may not have otherwise? Something to think about, but it's good to know. So I'm going to know motivation because I asked that question, and I'm going to know if I'm competing, right? I'm going to know those things. I'm also going to know objections right off the bat. And objections is probably the wrong word. Probably it should be like conditions. And those conditions are things like when they talk about, hey, John, when they talk about, people think it's funny, they think they're on camera when they look at the screen and they're not, it's behind. Yeah, it's all behind you. So it's like nobody can, anyway, it's funny.
Which page are you on, Terry?
Actually, I'm not on page yet. I'm just talking.
You're just explaining what the possibility.
I'm just explaining to you where we're going to go with the video and where we're going to come up with questions and things to ask people. Okay. So anyway, the other thing that when you're preparing your listing, if you know some of their objections ahead of time, well, you know, we want $735,000 for the house. And you do a CMA, you've already done your CMA and you find out that it's worth probably $695. Now you already know probably that that's going to be a little bit of a stumbling block. And so what additional do I need to take with me to show that $695 makes the most sense and that $725 or $735 is going to just leave it on the market longer? And your motivation is to hurry and get out of the house because you want to move before the school year. And so we need to be on the better side rather than the higher side. And I don't ever call it the low side. I always call it the better side, the more practical side. So anyway, we need to set them up ahead of time as far as the objection goes. Well, we're not gonna pay a full commission. Well, what is a full commission? We don't know anymore, do we? We used to have everybody's mindset. In fact, that's one of the things that caused NAR to cause the Department of Justice and the other attorneys and things to take a look at NAR, because across the United States, the most predominant rate for agent was 6%. And you've all heard the 6%. Well, they were 5, 6, 7, so they were in that, but everybody heard 6. Okay. And so then when you're talking to people, they're still thinking that. They don't necessarily know that the Department of Justice and that NAR, they don't know about a settlement. They don't know any of those things. But we do know now, right off the bat, that commission is going to be an issue. So we'll talk about how to overcome that and how to handle that as an objection and things. But the bottom line is that if I know it ahead of time, I can prepare for it, right? Well, this is what we're charging. I'm charging 3%. Well, good. I'm glad you're charging me less commission. But let me explain to you that with the new system in place, that the buyer's agent is also going to ask for commission to be paid
From the seller.
from the seller. They're going to ask that. Now, do they have to do that? Well, that's another lesson.
But
But-
what is the buyer's agent doing for the seller? Connecting.
The same thing that they always have done. And that's a good question. What is the buyer, in case you didn't hear her, it's what does the buyer agent actually do for the seller? Why is the seller having to pay their commission? And that is, you would have been good on the, you would have been good on the plaintiff's side of the Department of Justice and NAR lawsuit. What do they do for me? Well, what has happened in the past is that, without going too deep, we used to have a percentage that we charged, whatever that was. It could be 5%, it could be 6%, it could be 7%, it could be 10%, it could be whatever. And then from there, we took that number and we, in the MLS, offered out half of it or a percentage of it. Let's just, for number's sake, and I'm not preaching commissions or compensation or anything, but say it was at 6%, just for round number's sake. And then in the MLS, we would tell the seller that we're going to charge 6% commission to sell your house. Of that 6%, I am going to market your property to other agents in the area that have access to the MLS, that we will split that commission with them. So you'll be paying 6% total, but 3% will be to me to list your house, and 3% will be to the buyer's agent who works with the buyer, gets the buyer qualified, goes out and shows property to the buyer, and then works their way through the paperwork with disclosures and things from the buyer's side. So for all of those things that the buyer is doing, I'm splitting the commission that we're charging. So you don't have to pay twice.
Okay, but wouldn't the buyer pay their agent?
And they kind of are. If you as a buyer were buying a house for $700,000 and there was a 6% commission figured in that, are you the buyer paying for that?
Let's see the question.
Okay, to think back to the way it used to be, if it was a $700,000 house and I, as the listing agent, was charging you 6%, isn't that just part of the price of the house? And so when the buyer buys the house for that amount, aren't they paying their agent's commission anyway?
Technically, yes.
Yes.
I've never bought a house before.
You never have bought a house
I've
before?
not bought a house yet.
Oh my goodness, are you in for a treat? I'll see if I can hook you up with a good agent. Oh. Actually, when you buy a house, you're gonna get a benefit of commission break to start out with, because as a company, we do that. But anyway, so technically, the buyer was paying the commission anyway, because they were paying whatever the price was on the house.
Yes.
I wish I had a chalkboard instead of, I could graffiti this aluminum, but I don't know that they'd appreciate that. But so technically, the buyer was paying whatever you tacked on the house. And the commission was figured into that price. And so technically, the buyer was paying their agent commission anyhow. Now, what has happened is that because of the settlement and because of people like you, that's why I said you would have been a good plaintiff. But that said, why is this person paying for this person and things? And part of the problem or part of the issue was that it was not transparent enough to people who's paying who and why. So with transparency at the head of the lawsuit type thing, they decided that in court, the lawsuit went on for a couple of years. But in court, they decided that the seller was responsible to pay the selling agent, the listing agent, and the buyer was responsible to pay the buyer's agent. And that's a paperwork transaction. Because what happens now, and when we get into the residential purchase agreement, you'll see, but when we get into the residential purchase agreement, you'll see where on paragraph 3G, the buyer's agent will ask the seller to pay for the buyer's commission.
And that is how they do it now.
That's how they do it now. So it's separated it. It still amounts to the same thing in most cases. It becomes a little more negotiable now than it was before, because somebody can say, well, no, I'm not going to pay them that much. All they did was come and show the house one time and I didn't ever see them again.
So Terry,
Yes,
is this something, I'm
it's okay.
completely new. So
I know you're completely new. That's okay.
the buyer's agent, is that something that they have that conversation with the seller directly, or do they go with,
Paperwork.
okay, but
So-
they have that conversation directly, okay? They don't go through the listing agent?
Well, yes, because the offer comes through the listing agent. When you write an offer, you send it to the listing agent. You don't send it directly to the seller.
What if the seller and the buyer's agent don't agree, and then the buyer's agent decides to like steer their client somewhere else?
Well, it happens
Oh my gosh, okay.
every day. There's the process would be that you listed the house and that's some agents brought, and that happens most of the time. Not often enough do you get to represent both a buyer and a seller. Another agent brings the buyer, and so they come in with an offer and they write an offer up for their buyer and they submit it to the listing agent, who then goes to their seller and says, okay, we have this offer. $700,000, blah, 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 close in 30 days, close in 45 days or whatever. And they're asking you to pay they're asking you to pay 2.5% to the buyer's responsibility to pay their agent, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't, because probably when we get into the RPA, it would make more sense to you.
RPA.
Residential purchase agreement.
Oh,
Yeah. But anyway, and then further negotiation can happen at that point in time. But it's all done on paper. The offer comes in on paper. You sit down with your seller, you talk to the seller, they say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do this instead. I want more money. I want less money. I want to pay less commission. I want more days in escrow. I want time to move out. I want. And you write all of those I wants down in the form of a seller counter offer, which then goes back to the other agent, who then sits down with their buyer and says, well, I've got good news and bad news. They accepted this, but they didn't accept this. They countered with that. They changed this. They want more days in the house. They want a week after close to move out because they can't move till they get their money. And whatever those things are going to be in the form of a counteroffer. And then the buyer goes, well, that won't work out. So then the buyer's agent says, do you want to try to counter back with something that will work out? Or shall we just go look for other property? And then that decision is on the buyer's plate. And then they go look for other property. Or they say, you know, we've looked at a lot of properties to come to this one. This one did meet all of the other guidelines that you guys had set in your mind. Do you want to take the time to continue to look? Or shall we acquiesce to a couple of their little modifications? Or maybe change them again and send back a buyer's counter saying, well, okay, we'll go with you on this and we'll go with you on that. But we'd rather do this on C and D. And that can go back 2 or 3 times in the form of counter offers. But the conversations really should not be between the agents because it's not our house. I'm not selling it. I'm not buying it. My seller is selling it. Their buyer is buying it. And so the conversation really needs to come from them, but it needs to go through me so that I can explain it in real estate terms. If that makes sense. Kinda.
Yes, what does that usually look like? Phone calls or like a meeting at?
Usually looks like emails. That's what it's kind of gone to. And there's several reasons for that. One thing about emails, and truthfully, I'm a phone call guy. I like to call you and say, hey, you know, I got your offer, thanks. But what would your buyer think about this and this? Well, what we've done by doing that is we've eliminated the actual contract people, which is the seller and the buyer. And we've taken over that negotiation part ourselves, which we shouldn't take over. We should just be aiding. We should be helping either the buyer or the seller to understand where that negotiation is coming from and where it needs to go. And so it's nice to have it in an email. It's even better to have it in a counter offer so that it's actually something we can take to them and get signed. But at the very least, we have an email and I could sit there and read it to them off my phone if I wanted to. But I have something that is at least in writing. It's not signed and acknowledged by everybody involved, but it's at least in writing rather than, well, Terry said that he thinks we can get this to go. It would be easier if Terry would get off his lazy tush and write a counteroffer and send it to him accordingly. There is negotiation that happens sometimes out. Well, do you think they would? Well, I don't know. Put it in a counteroffer and send it to me and I'll go present it to him. That should be your stance.
And when you say a counter, when you say offer, that you're talking about legal paperwork.
Correct.
Got it.
Correct. We have an RPA, which is the residential purchase agreement. It's only 17 pages long. So it covers a lot of stuff. And then we have a counteroffer, and the counteroffer is only like 2 pages long. And what it is it just says, what do you want to counter? What don't you agree with? You don't agree with? I don't have them printed out today, but they're on your CAR zip forms website.
Oh, okay,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. A magical form for everything. All right. So there's one thing that I wrote down here at the top of my little page, and it's not at the top of any other pages, but it's kind of a little philosophy that I've had for a really long time in my life. I can't even tell you the first time I really thought of it, but you sell a house when you list it. And that's my opinion. So as a listing agent, I sell a house almost when I list it. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I have made sure that the seller understands what the house should look like. I've gone through and I've done a more than efficient evaluation of what the price should be. I've taken into consideration, based on these questions, I've taken into consideration how soon they have to move. What's their motivation? I got a new job. I'm out of town by October. I'd like to be done with it by October so I don't have to leave my spouse there by themselves. And anyway, whatever their motivation is, so we discover what that is, and then we list the house accordingly. Okay. So you need to sell it quickly. So we need to be on the better side of the market. And by that, I mean that we'll take the market prices and look and see what's going on, and we'll look and see how many days on the market these properties were and see if that fits within your time frame. And if it doesn't, we'll adjust accordingly. We'll adjust the price accordingly. If we don't get activity right off the bat, we'll adjust the price accordingly. And you have all of those discussions with them up front, so that by the time you list the property, they know what the price should sell at, what the anticipated showings, open houses, marketing will look like, whatever. And all of those things we go over ahead of time, so that by the time we get to signing the agreement and putting it in the MLS, we've already discussed all of those things. They know almost exactly what's going to happen. And I let them know, sometimes, much to their dismay, that the price that they want to get out of the house is a lot higher than what it's probably going to sell for. And it's a lot higher than what agents are going to think it's worth. And it's a lot higher than an agent is going to tell his buyer that it's worth. And an appraiser is going to have to make a final determination if we have a loan involved. And so this is the price that it needs to be priced at in order to obtain the best exposure, the most people looking, the best chance at getting an appraised value, and all of those things. We have that conversation up front. It's all part of our pre-qualifying the seller. We have those conversations up front. Usually, I like to do it on the phone. And the reason I like to do it on the phone, I know that sounds weird, but I like to do that part of it on the phone. I do it as a pre-qualification on the phone. I call to say, okay, now we had an appointment for tomorrow afternoon at 4:00. Is that still good? Yes, that's still good. Are all of the parties that are involved in the decision-making going to be there?
Like husband and wife.
Yeah, husband and wife, or maybe Uncle
Whoever.
Fred, who happens to be on title or whatever. Some people are getting, and you are young and beautiful and inexperienced and all those things. And mom and dad might want to get involved, maybe not financially, but you may make that call. Hey, mom and dad, I'm thinking of buying a house. What? Does that mean you'll be moving out? Great. I was looking for a weight room. Anyway, whatever the case may be. But there you go. And they have different, but anyway, so then the next question becomes, can we see it? Well, maybe, I don't know. Can we help you anyway? And then that conversation may evolve. And so there may be other people that you feel compelled to ask or compelled to have involved. Or, I don't know, the first time you bought a car. But the first time you bought a car, you probably researched it online, and then you went out and looked at it, but you didn't kick a tire, so to speak. And I'm not saying kick a tire does anything to the car, but they always talk about kicking the tire just to make sure like the car doesn't fall apart, make sure that, and so maybe somebody was involved in that process with you. Same thing with a house. Whoever's going to be involved, whoever's going to have an impact on the decision, whoever's going to have an impact on what we have to sell it for. If my uncle loaned me money for the down payment, then my uncle may be wanting to see what we are trying to sell it for, to see if he's going to get his money back or whatever. Whoever's going to be involved in the decision, are they all going to be at the appointment? The very least that you need to have at the appointment are the legal signers. So it's a husband and a wife. It could be two guys together. You and I could go buy a house together, whether we were going to live in it or use it as a rental or whatever. It wouldn't make any difference. But whoever is on title needs to be there. Well, he's not going to be able to be there till later. Okay, well, what's later? Well, probably 5 or 5:30. Okay, then why don't we set the appointment for 6 instead, to give everybody plenty of time to get there and, go to the bathroom and wash their hands and get a cold iced tea or whatever it is that they need to do when they first get home from work or back from the store or whatever. let's move in that direction. I'm comfortable coming at 6 o'clock if that's okay with you. And we need to be able to make those adjustments, but don't show up to a house when somebody's not going to be there. Because you're not going to be able to get anything signed that's contractual. All that effort you put into everything, you're probably going to have to explain twice. Because then the husband who was the one that was there, he says, well, you know, my wife had to work late tonight. They called her for extra duty at the hospital. She's a nurse or whatever the case may be. And so she was asked to stay over for a couple of hours. Is he going to make a decision? Maybe. Is he capable of? Is he?
Yeah, I'd love to. What's,
Like for an hour.
all right. Text me where?
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption by this Johnny.
Oh, yeah, he did say his.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like I do this with it.
Okay, anyway, so we want to make sure everybody's there because it doesn't do us any good to go over there twice unless we already have that plan. And it's not a good idea no matter what, because they're going to bounce questions off each other if they're both there, or if they're all three there, or whatever it happens to be. And if they're not, they're still going to bounce questions off each other. It's just they're going to bounce them over the phone or something like that. And they're going to say, well, so-and-so isn't here, but you can go over everything with me and then I'll tell them and then, and you know you're going to get a call and probably have to go back and you can't get anything signed anyway. So now I wasted that time twice because I had to do the presentation 2 times in order to get both people's signatures. So make sure everybody's going to be there. So that confirmation call that you make the day before or earlier that day or 2 days before, whatever it is, are all the parties going to be there? We're still on for 4 o'clock. You guys have to be out of the house by October because of your job that's starting somewhere else. And you get all of those things outlined just a little bit. And we're going to turn some time over to Tony here and let him talk about, and this, I'm going to throw this out and it's kind of along the lines of what we've just been talking. But it's actually better to lose your appointment than to waste your time with 2 or 3 times going back and things. It's just better. I know we don't feel better because we had it all. We were gung ho. We did all the work. We put together a fantastic listing presentation, a great CMA. We studied it several times. We practiced it in front of the mirror. We practiced it in front of the dog. We practiced it in front of a house plant. And we know exactly what we're going to say and how we're going to say it and when we're going to say it. And we did their pre-qual and we got their questions down so that I can answer them in my presentation. Because the better the presentation goes, the fewer objections you're going to have. So we're prepared for all that. And then they say, oh, well, my wife isn't going to be there. She has to work a couple hours late. Lose that appointment. I don't mean lose it as a client, but I mean lose that appointment time and say, oh, okay, yeah, things happen like that. I certainly understand. What would be a better time? Do you need to talk with her when she gets home and then call me back? Or do you want me to call you back a little bit later this evening after she is home and find out what works better? And we'll set a new time and then go out at a new time. Don't go out. Just, I encourage you not to go out when there's only part of the people there. So pre-qualify every appointment. I told you that to start out with. Now and forever. Okay, that's pretty easy. 100% of the time, now and forever. And so I'm going to turn Tony on here for a minute. And we're a few minutes actually. He's going to talk to you and tell you some of the same things that we just talked about. However, he'll go into a little more detail, which is okay.
And pre-qualify. Remember,
I don't mind.
to gather all the
Let me get back to that.
influence. We can't do the work for you. You have to go do the work throughout the day. But the foundation is being built. This should be the cornerstone of a great career. For those of you who have been around real estate and you've decided to go back and maybe build a foundation, Thanks for being here. Thanks for having the courage to start in and do it right this time. Let's get this thing going, okay? So we're now talking about pre-qual, but I can't let you go off last week's homework assignment or the last segment's homework assignment, right? Can't let you go. We ask you, did you make several copies of the lead generation form? Or have you got your 3x5 card system set up for following up on leads? Did you get that list of who is motivated? Have you really understood the motivation of people? Are you working towards that? Okay. Do you have your standards in writing for lead follow-up that you're going to do right now? Have you committed to your standards? And have you been contacting every lead you have under the standards you created? You do that on the back of consistent daily prospecting, right? We're in business now. Hopefully you're creating some great leads, and who knows by now, how many appointments have you set? How many leads have you gotten? Have you gotten listings and sales? I would expect that you should be well on your way for that. All right. So the next fundamental part that we need to look at, the next piece of the foundation, is pre-qualifying the seller. The next major step is your ability to pre-qualify the seller. I don't know if you're figuring this out, but if there's a block missing in your foundation, the whole thing could kind of crumble a little bit, right? If there's a little chink in the armor, right, then you're in trouble. These things all are connected. You know, is one more important than the other? Well, some need to be done faster and more consistent than the others, but they're all important parts of the process. They all mesh together, and pre-qualifying is one of them. I started out, okay, we expect that you're well on your way to operating a productive schedule. Are you? We expect you're already honing in your skills. Have you been honing in your skills? Have you been practicing and role-playing? Have you begun assembling your database and working it properly like we suggested? Okay. Have you launched your consistent lead generation program? Have you launched it? And then are you effectively following up on the leads that you get? Now we talk about pre-qualifying. The importance of pre-qualifying sellers is off the charts. All right. It's literally off the charts. And so many agents, right, skip this part. They never buy into this piece of the puzzle. And I'm going to ask you to have some blind faith with me now, and the 46 years, 47, whatever it is, years of the Mike Ferry organization, buy into the history of us that this is important. All right. So let's look at some points on pre-qualifying the seller. First point I wrote down, remember that pre-qualifying will set you apart from the competition. You have to understand the Mike Ferry organization uses the 180-degree rule. Okay, we study what all the masses of agents do, and their productivity is so low and the standards are so low that if we go in the other direction, 180 degrees the opposite way, we're going to win. The pre-qualifying is the step that can start really separating you from your competitors. In today's world, are you competing for a listing? Sometimes or all the time? You should believe that all the time you're competing to stay sharp. You know, even on those lay down, come list me appointments, you should pretend like you're competing. If you pretend like you're competing, then you stay sharp. And you need to stay sharp so you don't lose it. I mean, we're banking on, $5, $6, $7, $8, $10, $20,000 as an average commission. You can't gamble with that. Okay? And my mind is that the presentation has already begun. When you start pre-qualifying, this is where the actual presentation has started in a way. You're starting to perform and separate yourselves from your competitors. And this is where you start, widening the gap between you and the others that the agent or the seller might be considering, right? The presentation has begun. 2, I wrote down. It's important to understand that we're looking for people that have to sell versus people who are just wanting to sell. Pre-qualifying is about determining and finding out this level of motivation. Is there a strong desire, beyond desire, maybe even into have to or need to sell? And that's what our job is in pre-qualifying, is to find that out, right? Do they need a bigger home, a smaller home? Is there a divorce, job transfer, financial issues? Or the kids are gone, death in the family? We talked about it. Remember the motivations? This is where you really help understand that and find out how serious they are about it. A non-motivated seller causes so much problem in your business. They cause so much problem. They're hard to work with. They call you all the time. They cause troubles. They're mean sometimes. They don't follow the rules, and it's simply because they're not motivated. It's not their fault. They won't accept your advice. They won't listen to price. It's just that they're not motivated. So your pre-qualification is to determine that and recognize that you're separating yourself from the competitors. That's the backing. 3, keep the pre-qualifying script with you wherever, because you never know when you're going to book an appointment. Okay? So we have a pre-qualification script. You have one in your workbook. It's part of the scripts and dialogues, the pre-qualification, the listing presentation script. We're going to look at it, okay? This pre-qualification listing presentation script. You need to have this wherever you might set an appointment. Should you have a couple of these in your car? Yes. Should you have them in your briefcase? Yes. On your desk at the office? Yes. Should you have them at home by the phone? Probably. You should have these everywhere because you don't want to get away from pre-qualifying, right? So I'm going to ask that you get this printed. You're going to understand this inside out, backwards and forwards, right? And we want you to be in position to pre-qualify. Okay, we're going to say things like 100% of the time. We want you to pre-qualify 100% of the time using 100% of these questions that are here. We're going to ask you to do that. Is there any confusion with 100%? Usually people don't argue with 100%. It's not 99, it's not 50, it's 100%. We want you to do this every single time with every client you get because it helps you win, right? Really recognize this, okay? This pre-qualifying script is something that is so important to what we do. And you've got to adopt it as part of what goes on, okay? So I need you to print off a bunch of copies later. I need you to get them everywhere they need to be, and then you really need to dig into learning it, okay? You really need to understand learning it, okay? So let's look at the rules of pre-qualifying, okay? Don't worry, we're going to get to that script in a minute, okay? The rules of pre-qualifying. Mike Ferry has some rules. A, pre-qualify 100% of the prospects, 100% of the questions, no exceptions. We need you to pre-qualify 100%, no exceptions. At some point, you have to get this really ingrained in your foundation that pre-qualifying is all the time, every time. B, ask additional questions if necessary, if there's a red flag regarding their motivation or something you don't understand. So we have a series of questions. However, if a red flag pops up when you're asking these questions, right, you have to be prepared to ask more questions to find out. If you're unclear on something, ask. It's okay. You can't know too much, right? This is basically your scouting report. This is how you get to know everything you need to know so you can, when you get there, you can succeed at the presentation, okay? Let's go through the script, okay? Let's go through the pre-qualifying script. I'm going to read these questions to you, and as you hear these questions and you see them, as you see these, I want you to really just understand where you might have a hang-up. What? You're asking that what? How? What? Okay? And I want you to really understand there's a little psychology in this too, which helps you. This is designed to help you, okay? Before I come out, there's a number of questions I need to ask you, okay? Well, no, I don't have time for any questions. Okay, we're probably off on the wrong foot, aren't we? Red flag, okay? Red flag, right? Okay, sure, no problem, okay? If what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning on listing your home with me when I come out on Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Well, we don't know. We're interviewing some agents. We've got a lot of decisions to make. Or could they say yes? They could say yes, couldn't they? Yes, we are. You know, we heard about you. You were referred to us. Yeah, we're going to list with you. That's a great way to get your bearings straight on this, right? Okay. I want you to catch something here. Your job is to gather all the information without judgment. You're not, well, no. Oh, they're not motivated. No. Your job is to go through this question, all these questions, and gather all of the information and not judge it. Your judging their answers might cause them to not give you the answers right. So you have to be okay with their answers. When you're finished, then you can understand if they're qualified or not. But you have to ask all the questions, okay? So if what I say makes sense and you feel comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list your home with me on Tuesday at 4 o'clock? Well, we'll see. Okay, that's fair. Are you planning to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Well, we're going to interview 12. Red flag. Gosh, may I ask how you would come up with 12 in today's world? Why 12? Right? Well, we had a bad experience before and we want to make sure. Okay, it's good to know. Or they might say, no. It's fair. Tell me again, where are you moving to? This shows your attention to detail. Okay, now, are you writing the answers on this? Yes, you write their answers. You're going to need this later. Okay, where are you moving to? Well, we're moving to Detroit. Okay, how soon do you have to be there? Well, we'd like to be there in the next, 2 or 3 or 5 months. There's really no pressure, whenever. Okay, so if you didn't sell it, another question, red flag, right? So if you didn't sell it this summer, are you going to be okay? Well, we don't really care, yeah. A little red flag, right? When I see you, how much do you want to list your home for? Well, $2 million. You know it's worth $1 million. Red flag, right? As a professional real estate agent, I study homes and prices every day. Therefore, I assume you'll list with me at a price that will cause your home to sell, correct? Well, yeah, we don't want to give it away though, okay? So what price won't you go below? So what price won't you go below? Well, we won't go below 900. All right, good. How much do you owe on the property? How much do you owe? That's a fair question. Okay, you want to know. Well, we owe $2 million and it's worth $1 million. We have a problem, right? You need to know how much they owe. You need to give them a net sheet, don't you? Makes sense. Have you ever thought about selling it yourself? Have you ever thought about selling it yourself? Now, some people, am I going to introduce the idea to them? Boy, if I bring that up, do you think they're going to say, well, should we? No, you have to recognize people have either thought about it or they haven't. They either would consider that or they won't. That's not something you're going to introduce to them. But you do need to know, don't you? What if they have been planning on selling it by owner? You need to know. It doesn't mean they're disqualified. Okay? You keep moving forward. Will you help finance the home for the buyer or do you want your cash out? Will you help finance the home for the buyer or do you want your cash out? Now we get it. 99% of the world wants their cash out. This does demonstrate, though, that you know a lot about real estate. This gives you authority. This has them understand that you know that some people might finance the home for the buyer. Okay? 99% they'll say, no, we want our cash. Would you please describe your home for me? Would you please describe your home for me? This is where you can find out more about them, right? Describe the home. Well, it's a nice home. Okay, so tell me, is it, how's the condition? Are the carpets good? The paint good? Is the yard clean? How is it? Well, it needs some work. All right, so are you doing any remodeling projects? Ask additional questions if there's a red flag, okay? I'll be sending over a package of information. Will you take a few moments and review it? We'll get to that later. Next step is the listing presentation, okay? We'll get to that, but we're going to ask, will you take a few moments and review it? Sure, of course. Do you have any questions before I arrive? What's your commission? Okay, so one thing we know is this is about the bottom line for you. So would you like me to discuss you getting the most money possible? Let's deal with that at the presentation, shall we? Good. So our meeting should only take between 5 and 25 minutes. Is that okay? That'd be great. So you're setting them up that this is not a 2-hour adventure. Our process is not hours and hours. This should only take between 5 and 25 minutes, okay? Sure, that'd be great. I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday at 4. Pretty straight ahead questions, aren't they? Don't you need to know all that stuff? That's how you set yourself apart from the competitors. Your competitors won't under any circumstances ask those questions. They won't under any circumstances ask those questions. I'll be over. Most agents are going to find all of that out when they're live. Okay? We advise a one-step listing process. You don't go to the house and look at it, then go back and try to get the listing. We want you to set up that you get it in one meeting. Okay? That little gap between getting there the first time and coming back the second time is when you lose the listing to somebody else. Okay? So we seriously want to have you understand this is a one-step process, right? So ask additional questions was the second rule. The third rule, if and when you have staff, if you have staff now, if you're planning on getting assistant, we think you all will at some point as you progress, have your staff do the pre-qual. It's easier, okay? Those are our rules for pre-qualifying. I need you to follow those rules if you want a good foundation. Number 5 I wrote down. When possible, do your pre-qualifying at the time you set the appointment. When possible, do your pre-qualifying at the time you set the appointment. Because it saves time, right? So you're prospecting away and somebody says, yeah, let's meet. We'll get that. We're thinking about getting the home sold. Why don't we meet tonight at 5 o'clock? Okay, good. So before I come over, there's some important questions I need to ask you, okay? What if you find out that they're not motivated at all or they have some major issues? Wouldn't it save a lot of time to find that out now versus doing the work and the research and all the things you have to do for the appointment? We want you to pre-qualify on the spot when possible, okay? If for some reason it isn't possible, you still have to get called back and pre-qualify. Remember our 100% rule? Okay, you have to do it, but we want you to do it on the spot whenever you possibly can. 6, you've got to practice and role play this thing. Practice and role play the pre-qualification script. You need to make that script part of your practice routines. It needs to be part of the role play and the script practice that you're doing. When you do that, the results are better, your confidence is better, your delivery is better. Remember what I said earlier, this is part of the presentation. This is part of, if you fumble and bumble on this all the time, right? That doesn't send off a good message to the seller that you know what you're doing. Okay? Now keep in mind, 99% of the time you get to read this, so you've got it there, you're reading it, you're writing the answers down, you're keeping track, you're going to need it. However, we want you to practice and rehearse it so you have the authority and the confidence to deliver it properly. Make sense? Good. 7, the beauty of pre-qualifying is that it draws out the seller's objections. And one of the other hidden beauties of this is it draws out the seller's objections. There's nothing more fun. You go to you're at a listing presentation, you haven't pre-qualified, you're sitting there and the seller, they elbow each other. Hey, honey, did you tell Tony about our 4th and 5th and 6th mortgage on the house? Well, I would have liked to know that, right? Hey, Tony, did you mention to Tony that we have that whole back of the house that hasn't been permitted and it's under construction right now? That'd be good to know, right? Hey, did you tell Tony that we really believe we owe 3 times more than it's worth? Right? Tony, we have 19 appointments lined up after you. These are all things that you get I don't like to get blindsided. I don't know if you like to get blindsided, but the best way to avoid that is to pre-qualify so you can get the possible objections out in advance. Right? Hey, we're looking for an agent that wants to do it at a discount commission and we're only going to list it for 30 days. Okay, I got it. But now you know what objections you're going to have to overcome at the presentation. Isn't it better to practice those before you get there? Or do you like to get hit with those live? All right? Guess what? Your competition agents get hit with it live. You get it in advance by pre-qualifying. Okay? It smokes out the objections, right? 8, pre-qualifying allows you to set standards for the people you work with. I have to tell you, in the Mike Ferry organization, we work so hard to get you to understand as part of your foundation setting standards. Because the industry doesn't have a ton of standards, right? If you set a lot of standards, you typically make a lot more money. By pre-qualifying, you set standards for the commission you charge, the length of the listing that you keep. Many of your companies require that you have a certain length of listing and a certain commission, right? It also, you can set standards for the type of people you work with. If somebody's rude or obnoxious or abrasive or they have bad language or there's something there that's not acceptable to you, do you want to deal with that person? I don't think you want to deal with that person. Many times in the pre-qual, you're going to find out what you're stuck with. And it usually gets worse from there. If somebody's rude and obnoxious and won't listen to you, it's just going to get worse live. we're going to ask that you move away from those because you have standards for what you do. Okay? It allows you to hold those standards. Here's the benefits. 9, the benefits of pre-qualifying. I really want you to understand the benefits. A, it sets you apart to win. One of the biggest benefits of pre-qualifying is that this actually sets you apart from your competitors. I want you to see this as a competitive edge. This is not disqualifying. You're not going in with the mindset, I'm going to figure out how to not go. You're going in with the mindset, I need to figure out how to win. And this is part of the presentation, right? You know, if you have to have a lot of energy, enthusiasm with this. When I see you, and if what I say makes sense, and you have to have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. This is part of you performing so that you can get the job. When when they hang up the phone, they go, whoa, that Tony's a fireball. I can't wait to see him. It's got to be that, right? This is designed, A, to set you apart to win, okay? B, you find out about the objections. You're going to find out about the objections they may have in advance, so you have a scouting report. You can get prepared in advance. You're all set and prepared to overcome those objections when you get there live. Such an advantage. C, it keeps you focused on the activities that lead to income. Pre-qualifying keeps you focused on the activities that lead to income. Remember what I said earlier? You don't choose if a seller's going to move or not. You just get in the way. If they're not going to move, you can't convince them to move. You can't talk them into it, right? They got to pack up all their belongings. You can't talk somebody into moving, right? So if they're not motivated, wouldn't it be better for you to move yourself away from that presentation and not go there and get beat up, right? And go back focused on generating, finding better leads, finding somebody that's going to move. This keeps you focused on activities that lead to income. Now, I know that it's an easy, natural thing when somebody says, come over, you feel like doing your job is just to run over there and it's a productive thing. But if it's not going to work out, it takes away all that time and energy from you going to find somebody that is going to work out. I hope this is sinking in, okay? D, you're able to choose the clients you work with. Hey, in our world, we want you to generate a lot, follow a schedule, have an incredible database. We want you to do all of those things so ultimately you can be more selective in the clients you have. Now, I'm not saying you're only going to work with this unicorn, right? We all have to work with people, okay? But we don't want you to be, tied to people that really cause you all that anxiety and the frustration and the fear and all those things. There's people like that out there. By following this foundation, you don't have to do that. And pre-qualifying is a big part of that, okay? I wrote down E, it creates less client problems and more business. We have seen people in real estate, and this happens very common. They go out, they get a listing for somebody that's rude, obnoxious, they're not motivated, they're not going to follow the rules, they're not going to do what it takes to sell. You are under contract with them, okay? They're calling you all the time. They won't listen to what you say. You ask them to price. You submit an offer and they reject it. Bad, ugly. There's anxiety, right? And all that does is cause you not to do more business. You know the one bad apple little theory? One bad apple will spoil the bunch. That is so true sometimes with having listings. One bad listing can literally wreck your chances of getting another couple good listings. We don't want that to happen to you. So pre-qualifying solves that issue, all right? Number 10 I wrote down, nothing drains your energy and motivation faster than going on a lot of unmotivated, unqualified appointments. Okay? We know this happens, right? Hey guys, the family, hey kids, hey honey, I'm going on a listing appointment tonight. I got an appointment at 7:30 tonight. Well, do you want me to hold dinner for you? No, it's okay. You guys eat, have a good dinner. I'll come home later. I'll fix a sandwich when I get home, right? It's 7 o'clock at night. You go over to someone's house. They beat you up. You walk out without a listing. Gosh, your family was home. They were relaxing, enjoying themselves. You come home, walk in the door. Hey, did you get the listing? No. There's nothing more demotivating than that. And if you do that over and over and over again, that is a recipe for disaster. That's how you end up, beat up and not liking this job. Okay? So we want you to recognize that if you go on qualified, motivated appointments, you get to walk in the door and go, hey guys, listing taken, yes, right? That is more of the idea that we're looking for. Okay? 11, it's okay to lose a prospect or an appointment because of pre-qualifying. You've got to recognize that in our business, saying no, stepping away, not going on that appointment, right? It's okay to lose it because it's better to lose that appointment now than waste your time with somebody. It's not going to work out. And then you can go back to doing something more productive. You have to accept that it's okay to recognize. Now, do you need to learn how to gracefully unset an appointment? Possibly. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, after gathering all this information, I'm going to respectfully decline our appointment tonight. May I share with you why? Well, after all of the information that I've gathered, it looks like if I were to come over, I'm just going to make you upset, okay? We're going to talk about prices you're not going to like. I'm not going to be able to provide the service. And quite honestly, it looks like your motivation to sell is a little lower than the standard of the clients that I work with. So rather than that happening, I'm just going to back out of the appointment now. I wish you the best of luck. Good luck. Go out and get the home sold if you're going to. Thank you for your time. It's okay, but you have to learn how to step away, right? 12, spend more time pre-qualifying and less time building a relationship. Okay, they're not looking for a best friend. You're not there to bond and have, hey, let's talk about soccer kids and all that. That's not it. You have to really pre-qualify and don't think you're going to try to build this incredible relationship with them in this process. This is not a place. It's not even really that possible for you to bond too much over the phone like that. They haven't met you. They don't know you. They're interviewing others. Why would, don't think that. This is me presenting. This is starting to get the listing, but it's not about some kind of a relationship thing. Okay? It's very important. All right. So here's what we want to do. This is such an important section. We want to look at the homework that you have. And so the homework's a little more involved with this to get this moving, right? So I wrote down, print several copies of the pre-qualification script and have them ready in your office, your home, and your car. You need to take our pre-qual script. You need to have a few copies at the office, a few copies in the car, at home, wherever else you might need them. Okay? Can you visualize this now? See, I imagine you understanding you've got a lead card or a lead sheet. You've been working that lead sheet. Now you convert that to an appointment. Now you've got the appointment. Then you've got the pre-qual sheet. You put all the answers on there. So you've got all their information on the lead sheet, and then you've got all the answers to the pre-qual on the pre-qual sheet. You have those two pieces of paper that you're going to take forward with you into the listing appointment. You're going to need them both, right? So you have all that as part of building up the appointment. So these sheets should come with you. This pre-qual sheet's going to come with you, and you'll see it in the next segment when we talk about the listing presentation, okay? But you need to understand that this is a part of the process. So you need these sheets everywhere. 2, I wrote down. Incorporate immediately practice and role play of the pre-qualification script every day for a month. Okay, I would ask you to role play and practice this pre-qualification script once a day for a month. Okay? If you do that, then you're going to groove in those questions where you really get confident with it. It needs to become part of daily work that you do. When we get to the next segment with the listing presentation, you can see how that comes together. Okay, it's going to come together there. But it's a daily exercise, okay? 3, I wrote down, you need to pre-qualify every appointment you set now and forever. You need to pre-qualify every appointment you set now and forever. So I want you to brainwash yourself, whatever you need to do, right, to adopt this idea that I only pre-qualify and I always pre-qualify when I go. That there's not really an option for that. And we also understand that in the early phases of building a career, there's such a natural instinct and desire not to. You're going to have to fight off that instinct and that desire to just run over and meet people. Let me give it a shot. Let me go. This is the first step in a process that we use that's designed to win listings. So I hope we've gotten that clear. I hope it's gotten into what you see as a major building block of the foundation of selling real estate. We've got a lot of work to do, okay? So we're in that space now where we've had several of these building blocks. Are you on track? Are you keeping your homework? Are you 100% checking off the homework? This is one of those 100% kind of things, okay? You have to do all the homework. Is there any of the homework I've given you so far that you don't like? Is there any that you're resisting? Example, are you resisting prospecting every day for 2 hours and making 20 contacts? Can't resist that. Have you not gotten your whole database put together yet and gotten it organized? And have you not called them and asked for referrals? Can't skip that. Are you sloppy on your time? Are there any parts of your time management that aren't working? Are there any parts right now of your schedule that you've noticed just it's not working? It's time to take a close look at that and either get more accountable or figure out if there's a little tiny adjustment that needs to be made. Right? We're in this little space now where the foundation is really needing to hold you up. You should be out getting leads, you should be setting appointments, you should be qualifying, and you should be earning some serious money on its way right now. Okay? So that's our little recap. Thank you so much for this building block of the foundation. I'm excited because we're getting into the good stuff, okay? So
It doesn't always pan out. Okay. Finished with that part. I wanted to cover just, and I know you don't have this on the screen in front of you. I apologize. I didn't know that we'd have time one way or the other. But yesterday, we went through the residential listing agreement and we got through the whole listing agreement and everything. There were a lot of questions and there were a couple of questions that came to me after the fact about a couple of the disclosures. Now, I told you that when you download on the CAR Zip Forms website, the residential listing agreement, it automatically downloads with, yeah, this should be in the back of your file. Anyway, and by the way, it's in the documents that you downloaded today. I went ahead and shoved them in there with it. So hopefully it's in there with those. And starts out with possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, I hope. If not, should be on there, I hope. But if not, it's on yesterday's. Oh, there you go. Okay, you found it. All right. So we got all the way through the listing agreement itself and a couple of those things. But when you download the listing agreement, it automatically downloads 4 or 5 disclosure forms that are required with each listing or required with each sale. There are some others that are required that we go over when we go over disclosures and things. But these download exactly at the same time the listing agreement does. And so I just wanted to touch base on them because a couple of people said, well, what does that one mean? And so I thought, well, okay, we'll just cover it at the end of this if we have time. One is the possible representation of more than one buyer or seller. Now, it's like, how do I represent more than one buyer or seller? Well, this is kind of an explanation. You know, if I list a house and it's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, single-story house that I've had half a dozen people interested in that type of a house for a long period of time that I've been working with as buyers, and we haven't been able to find one, and boom, this one comes on the market. Do I pick and choose which buyer I show it to? Or do I show it to all of my buyers that I'm representing and that kind of a thing? Because I have a buyer representation agreement that says that I'm going to do all of these things. One of them includes showing you the house. Maybe I'll show John the house Monday, I'll show Mary the house on Tuesday. Henry will be Friday, whatever it happens to be. But until somebody decides to make an offer that then gets accepted, I'm going to represent that house to all of you, for all of my buyers that I'm working with specifically. So you actually can work with more than one buyer at a time on a property. Just because you saw a property that came up and you have one buyer, it's not up to you to pick and choose who to show it to. Well, I'm going to show it to my sister first. Well, okay. There might be those kind of things that pop into it or something, but for the most part, I'm representing buyers for this property, and I've got more than one that are interested, so I can certainly represent more than one. Now, how do I represent more than one seller? How can I take care of more than one seller at a time? Well, it's the same type of thing. My seller might have several properties. I may be working with several different properties at a time. I may be working with multiple sellers on one property. And so I'm actually representing more than one buyer or seller for the purposes of disclosure and consent to either list or purchase some things. So I'm working with more than one person, possibly, not all the time. Dual agency, that puts me in a position of representing everybody everywhere all the time. Dual agency is the fact that I have a seller and we've listed a property and I have a buyer or multiple buyers that are interested in that property. And I can show them to whoever wants to see it. I'll call everybody. Just got a new listing over on Washington Avenue. And it's kind of fits your criteria. Are you interested in taking a look? And then maybe I would write an offer for them. So I would have the listing and I would have the buyer. And all that is legal. We can show it to more than one person. We can represent more than one buyer. We can represent a buyer and a seller. All of those things are legal. There's nothing, by doing those things, the only way you're stepping over the bounds of what you should be doing is if you don't show it to the people that you said you were representing, right? If you decide not to show it, well, I don't want to show it to Doug because, he's kind of trashy and stuff, and I don't want the neighborhood.
Out of this price.
Price point is automatically disqualifies it, so you're in good shape that way. But we don't steer. We've probably heard that word, steering. We don't guide somebody to a neighborhood that is specifically made up of realtors. I don't know who'd want to live in that neighborhood, but anyway, we don't guide and we don't steer. We're fair to everybody. We can represent more than one at a time until we get under contract. Once we get under contract, then we are representing just that person or that couple or whatever it happens to be. All right. Fair housing. So fair housing, this automatically downloads with that. We have to be fair. It kind of goes hand in hand with possible representation and things, is we can't decide who can live in an area and who can't live in an area. And I had a question yesterday that somebody asked about a 55 plus community. Because we have a lot of 55, we're a retirement state, and certainly Southern California is a retirement state. So we have lots of 55 plus communities. You and anybody under the age of 55 can buy in a 55 community. If you're old enough to sign a contract in the state of California, then you are old enough to buy. The HOA and the legal description of a 55 plus community says that you can't live there until you're 55. So you can buy a house, you just can't live there. And so you could buy a house, we have people quite a bit that will buy a house. They come down from Canada, they love the weather, they're close to the beach, they're out of the snow, whatever's going on, and they come down here and they say, oh, you know what? We will be 55 in 2 more years or 3 more years or something. Why don't we go ahead and start looking around to buy a house? in a 55+ community. There's that nice one over there that's on the golf course and blah, blah, blah. And why don't we go ahead and buy something like that? And then we'll just, we can do a couple of things. One is that we could maybe rent it out, or if we didn't want to do that, we can just sit on it and pay the taxes and stuff for a couple of years, and then we can move in here when we're 55. So we can't tell somebody they can't, but it does become part of our pre-qualifying questions a little bit. If somebody says, well, we'd like to buy a house in a 55 community over on that golf course, then that brings up another pre-qualifying question, which is that you have to be 55 or older to live there. And of course, all of the other fair housing rules apply all the time. They're all listed on here and things. I think we have in California right now. I think somebody told me, or I read it somewhere or something, that we have 28 fair housing and discrimination rules. Now, all of them aren't listed on this form. I think we only have about 20 on this form. But age, sexual orientation, gender, marital status, familial status, citizenship, immigration status, primary language, military. So we have all of these things that are considered to be fair housing and discrimination problems if you act against any of those. You know, you'd probably be more comfortable over here because the school or the area over here is mostly, and one we run into occasionally and things because we are close to Mexico and things, and is that we have schools and areas that are predominantly Spanish speaking Mexican children or children of Mexican descent or something like that. We have areas like that. We can't say that you'd probably be happier there. We don't want to get into that steering again. It's one of those things that it's us kind of setting up neighborhoods, and we don't have the authority to do that. So you didn't have to bring us lunch, Jen. Comes in and cooks in a microwave and it smells good and
It smells very good.
exactly. Yeah. All right. Anyway, and then it says down here a little bit further, who has to comply with these laws. And it goes through a list: sellers, real estate licensees, mobile home parks, insurance companies, landlords, brokerages, homeowners associations, blah, blah, blah. So we're all bound by the same guidelines. And that is a disclosure that people have to sign. Okay. Next one is the seller's advisory. Now, seller's advisory automatically gets downloaded with the listing as well. And what it does, without going through all of the line by lines and things like that, I'll just tell you that basically what it says is that it says that you have to, as a seller, you have to tell me what you know about the property. We're going to do this through a series of disclosures and things like that. But basically, it's up to you. I haven't ever lived there, so I'm not going to guess. I may come up to the front of your house and look up at the roof and go, oh my gosh, there's some tiles missing. There's some, and I may have to ask about those kind of things. But it's not my disclosure. It is their disclosure. They need to tell us everything they know about the property. Well, what about the kids band that practices in the garage next door? Do I have to disclose that? Well, it's not like going to show up on your required disclosure, but there is a disclosure that says neighborhood noise nuisance. But that's subjective. I may like hearing Nirvana over and over and over. And somebody else may be into, I don't know, Garth Brooks. So Garth Brooks is a nuisance to me. I'm not saying he is. Okay, I'm just pointing it out. But I don't care if they're out there jamming on electric guitars. And so it's a subjective thing. And so is that a noise nuisance? No, not really. Because it's subjective. It's in the eyes and the ears of the people involved. If it's next to a gravel pit that operates 20 hours a day, that's a noise nuisance. If it's under a flyway of an airport, that's a noise nuisance. And those are the kind of things we have to disclose, not the things that are subjective and are Well, you know, the neighbors next door, they have 7 children. And those kids are all over and they're climbing fences and they're yelling and hollering and they have a pool in the backyard and friends come over and that is not a noise nuisance. It might be to you occasionally. So I live in an area that's kind of rural and it's on a dead end street. And I'm the next house to the dead end. So I'm clear down at the end. Well, there's only 10 houses in about a mile, so it's not like we're right next door to each other. But that being said, I have a neighbor, super nice guy. Antonio's his name, Tony. And he built a covered patio area that is probably, I would guess it's probably 12 feet by 20 feet. And he has it lit up and he's got speakers in it and everything else. And about once a month, because he's like the family good guy, I guess, for their family, our dead end street will be filled with cars. And Anthony, he'll be having a birthday party for a family member or something like that. And they play, and usually my wife and I will, not always, but a lot of times we'll go to a dinner or we'll go to a movie or something like that on the nights that he has his party, because he plays that, I don't know how to explain it, but it's that Spanish music that's heavy on the tuba, you know, boom, 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 and he's got it out all of these speakers and things. Well, that's a noise nuisance once in a while. And can we close that off? Pretty much. Yes. In fact, a lot of times he's brought us over ribs. He's brought us over ceviche. He's, shrimp ceviche or something. He'll go, "Hey neighbor, you want some ceviche?" And I said, "Of course." And, and he'll bring it over and stuff. And it's kind of one of those, I'll pay to be noisy type things. And he's invited us over for ribs and beer a couple of different times and things, but I usually go over for that, but I'm not a beer guy. All right. California Consumer Privacy Act. And this is a mandatory disclosure. And it gets downloaded with the listing and again with the RPA. And it is saying that during the process of buying or selling real estate, your personal information will be collected and likely shared with others, which is true. Right? We're going to get this information on the listing and we're going to put it in the MLS. We're going to get this information on an RPA, a residential purchase agreement, and we're going to put that into escrow. And escrow is going to send it to the title company and the title company is going to give it to the lender. And so your personal information, other than your favorite TV shows and stuff, is going to go all over the place. And that's just an explanation. However, the further explanation is that we do not share it with disinterested third parties. It's not like anything that we sell as realtors. We don't, and that's how you get it. I mean, you look at your cell phone and how many times do you get things from people and you go, how'd they get my number? Well, the way they got your number is through somebody who didn't mind selling it to them. Maybe it was an insurance company, maybe it was a whatever. But anyway, we don't do that. We try to keep your personal information as condensed as we possibly can. And that is what we're trying to do. So then one of the questions that came up yesterday, because we checked it off on the listing itself, was the seller can't sell the property until he has a place to move. And I told you then about the SPRP, which is seller's purchase of replacement property. And SPRP should be the next form in your book. Yeah, SPRP.
Oh,
Seller's purchase of replacement property, right? And if your seller tells you that if one of his little things, when you have your pre-qualifying questions and you have your sit-down listing presentation and things, has to do with the fact that he has to sell their property in order to move, or they have to buy a property in order to move, one of the two, then so you're kind of tied with time limitations because, but you still have to disclose it. So if somebody writes an offer on your property, you actually put in the MLS, in the private remarks, where the agent can see it, but not Zillow and Realtor.com and all those places. But in the private remarks in the MLS, you can put that consummation of this contract requires seller purchasing a replacement property. And then this form, when somebody writes an offer, so now the agent already knows that, he's already explained it to his buyer. And you have to provide a seller's property, this form here, SPRP, with your signed RPA. So he sends you a residential purchase agreement, your seller loves the deal. He still has to disclose this. And so he discloses this, and you can see on there, there's a couple of different items. One is how many days do you get to find a replacement property? Well, the default on here is 17, which means that you have the same time as the contingency periods of the residential purchase agreement to accomplish finding another house. Or maybe it's already in escrow. That's the best way. It's already in escrow. That's B. And so the escrow holder is so-and-so escrow, and the escrow number is such and such a number. That's the best way. And, or another not too good a way, but the other one is close of replacement property, which basically means if you write a residential purchase agreement for 30 days or 45-day close of escrow, then he has that entire time to find a place and you can't do anything else. You're tied into, both people are tied into a contract for that period of time. And so you want to clarify those things. You want to make sure that everybody understands the time frames, and you have to send it out with any signed residential purchase agreement. It has to go out. And you have to identify it in the MLS in the private remarks, because that is a disclosure item on our part that we have to take care of. Those are all the ones that kind of finishes up yesterday. Sorry, we couldn't get to it yesterday, but the class ran a little long. And at least we've covered it. So now you're off the hook. Can't say you didn't know. Can't say Terry didn't tell us. So if there are no questions on anything that we covered today, I will sign everybody off and everybody can go to work.
Jerry, I'm supposed to take 8 of your classes. So how do we keep track?
Keep track.
Says-
I just write names down.
Did you write down my name?
Haven't yet, but I was in the process of writing
All right.
names when this ended and it came back.
Okay.
Here, you can add your name to the bottom of that list.
Foundations.
Here.
Today's the 7th.
Mhm.
Do you mind my?
Nah, I don't care. I can make it out.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good week.
Thank
And
Don't
you
forget about our
too.
monthly- Don't forget about our monthly connect on Thursday.
By the way, was this session recorded? Do you know?
Yes, in fact, I think you're still recording. I
No,
haven't
not
stopped.
this one. When Tony Smith was Tony
Yeah.
Smith video. Yeah.
Yes, it was all recorded. It'll be in there
Perfect.
within the next day or two.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good day. I think we have another class on Friday, but I think we're off tomorrow and
Here.
I don't know.
Yes, Friday listing presentation. That would be
Oh, see, there you go. You know
awesome.
better than I do. So will you be teaching that, Shakira?
Since Real Estate Alliance merged with Masters, I am so very happy.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
I'm
We-
learning
we-
a lot from you, because all my transaction was just wing it, but so
Good to know. Good to know. All
okay.
righty. See you all soon.